A very good morning to you. Just picking up on yesterday's launch, premiere, introduction, whatever you want to call it. And I said in my teasers at the end that I would tell you about a moment that happened to me, a moment in my life which I'd love to know if anybody else has had any similar experiences. So if you want to put something in the comments below, or just share that with me, or even just say, sort of, yeah, there's people out there, yeah, I get that all the time, whatever it might be. I'd be really interested. So I'll go into a bit more detail now about what I called Joyce's message. I think it's more Joyce's gift is what I should call it, but anyway. So I'll just recount this to you, and then you can sort of tell me what you think. Because I'm sure out there in life there are people who have things to offer us, and it can come in unusual guises and things in a way that you least expect it, and it's just incredibly hard hitting and drives home some kind of empowerment. But anyway, so I'll just tell you the story. So basically, I was in my previous job, or my job before I became semi-retired, and it was a normal day. And in my job, I'm an audiologist, and I test people's hearing. And this person, I didn't, as she'd been booked in for me, I'd no prior knowledge of her. I've never met her before, and I was in my office, and they said, well, oh, Joyce is here now. So I said, oh, I'll send her in. So Joyce came in with a view to having a hearing test, and we did our normal going through all the normal stuff before a test, and I got an insight a little bit into her personal circumstances and her life and bits and bobs. And she was a very frail sort of figure, obviously not well, and it transpires that she had cancer. She was in her early 90s, and if I'm honest, it sounds horrible, but she represented a bit of a pitiful sort of character. Her hair was thinning underneath her hat, and she was incredibly thin, but she had a lot of life in her eyes, and I could tell that she was one of my thoughts was that this person hasn't got long to go, and it was quite saddening for an empathetic person to sort of witness this thing. And so we went through all the formalities, and I said, okay, Joyce, so what we'll do, we'll test your hearing now, and then we'll come back and we'll look at the results. So we went through that process, and I said, take a seat, and I'll explain what I know now I've been tested your hearing. So she sat opposite me on my desk, and I got my results with a view to showing them to her. And during the course of I felt a warmth towards her and a sort of empathy, and she seemed to reciprocate that and seemed to be, I don't know, in some way, I can't quite put my finger on, sort of responding to that in some way. Anyway, so I put the paper on the desk, and before I could actually look up from preparing myself to start what I was going to say to her, I was aware that she'd come forward and was leaning across the desk towards me. And as I looked up, I was aware that she was only a foot away from my face, and she'd come in really close. And everything just seemed to stop in that moment. It was really weird. And if I'm honest, I don't know how long this thing lasted. It could have been 20 seconds. It could have been 5 minutes for all I know. But it was incredibly captivating. And what happened was that through that eye contact, I felt she was passing to me something. Let's call it her gift. And I didn't know what the repercussions of this were going to be at the time. But basically, she held my gaze. Now, I'm not a religious man, and I know it has this sort of resonates with people who've had religious experiences, but she transferred something to me in the form of a deep sense of spirituality, I suppose you'd call it, but it represented itself by a sort of a warmth that just seemed to pass from her to me and just grew, and it came in through my eyes, through her eyes, and I felt a huge warmth flood into my body. My whole body seemed to completely taken over by this, and I couldn't really move. I was sort of transfixed, just absorbing or taking in whatever it was that she was transmitting towards me. And then she smiled, and I no doubt smiled back at her, and there was this sort of bond that then sort of broke down a little bit, and she reclined and sat down, having done her passing on of whatever it was that she'd got for me. Now, in a funny sort of way, we conducted the rest of the consultation in a usual sort of fashion, and then in the end she said, "That's fantastic, Rick, thank you, and I'll take on board everything you've said, and I'll get back to you." Now, she never did get back to me, but directly. But I did try to call her a couple of weeks later, and she answered her phone, and in an extremely frail voice said, "Rick, I can't proceed," she said. I'm very unwell at the moment." When somebody understated like that tells you they're very unwell, the upshot of that is that she was essentially very close to passing. So we finished that phone call, but I'll just go back to what happened the rest of that day. From that moment, and for about, I'm going to say it was a long time, extended period, about 3 or 4 months, I carried around the impact that she had made on me. I can't really fully sum it up. I know driving home that night, because I was working up in Scotland and I'd get back down to the South Lakes, and it's sort of, so I had a long drive back and I didn't want to put any music on, and the whole world seemed to have taken on a slightly different hue, and I was struck with a sense of sort of awe and wonder for the world I was looking at around me. It was just so strange, and it was very strong for the first week, and I'd get up in the morning as I normally would, I'd go out for my daily walk, but I just changed, and I started to see beauty and wonderful things that touched me in the simplest things, just in leaves and trees and birds and clouds and sunrises and sunsets. It was like an awakening sort of thing. And then I started doing random things, like I'd walk past a snail on the pavement and I'd get about 20 yards on and think, that's going to get squashed, and I'd turn around and walk back, pick it up and put it safely on a wall, and things like that. And so many things seem to have more meaning to me in my life. Now, that went on, I shared it with most of the family at the time, and friends of mine and acquaintances, because the main thing I said when I told other people was, what do you think this is, and what do you think I'm meant to do with it? I felt I'd been handed something that I was meant to utilise and put to good service somehow, and I didn't even know how to understand it, never mind really how to pass it on to others. Perhaps I did in some ways, but just with by nature of the story. But anyway, that's what happened, and it made a lasting impression on me. And so I'd love to know if anybody else has ever encountered somebody or something or some place that's had a dramatic impact on you that has left you somehow enlightened and with something incredibly positive, and how you dealt with that. Was it something that you felt you deserved? I didn't really think I deserved whatever it was she gave me, this sense of awe and wholesomeness and completeness. I don't know, it's so hard to just put it into words. So if you want to tell me in the notes underneath and the comments, you're more than welcome, and I'd love to hear that and talk about it some more. Cheers guys, bye bye.